How much do you know about Taiwan? Did you know that there is a huge Muslim community here? Is the situation of Muslims in Taiwan similar to the Muslims in China? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Abdullah and I am a Taiwanese Muslim. In today's video, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the situation of Islam in Taiwan and give you a general idea of how Islam is spreading in this land. Before we get into the topic, if you're curious about the daily life of Muslims in Taiwan, or you are interested and you would like to know more about Islam in the Chinese culture, then this channel is for you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and leave down your comments in the comment section. Let's get started. Bismillah. Taiwan is a small island with a population of 23 million people, and the official language here is Mandarin Chinese. But is there any difference between the Chinese spoken in China and the Chinese spoken in Taiwan? Yes, there are some differences, mainly in the spoken language. There are some differences in the accents and the terms that we use, but if we were to randomly speak with a Chinese person, then there shouldn't be any problem in that. In terms of written Chinese, in mainland China, people generally use simplified Chinese, whereas in Taiwan, we use traditional Chinese. Here's an example of how the word Quran is written in Chinese. As you can see, the left part is written in simplified Chinese, and the right part is written in traditional Chinese. They look slightly different, but you do notice that the characters in simplified Chinese are less sophisticated, which is why it's called simplified Chinese in the first place. It's quite common for people even in Taiwan to read simplified Chinese, but of course, most of the time, people feel more comfortable and prefer to read in traditional Chinese. As for the religions in Taiwan, the majority religions are consisted of Buddhism, Taoism, and folk religions. There's also a small percentage of Christianity here, but even though it's a small percentage, it is still a lot more widespread than Islam. Now let's talk a little bit about the Muslims in Taiwan. How many Muslims are there in Taiwan? The estimated number is around 300,000. And to give you an idea, the total Muslim population in Japan is 230,000, which means that the Muslim population in Taiwan is actually more than the Muslim population in Japan. And of course, the main reason behind that is the huge number of Indonesian workers in Taiwan. Many people in Taiwan hire Indonesian caregivers to take care of the elderly or people with disabilities in their houses. And this is something extremely common in Taiwan. For example, in my house, when I was still a child, we used to hire an Indonesian caregiver to take care of my grandparents. May Allah have mercy on them. The amazing thing is that the Indonesian caregivers, they have a good reputation such that when the Taiwanese people are hiring a caregiver from a foreign country, they would feel more comfortable to find someone from Indonesia rather than from anywhere else. So the role of caregivers are actually extremely crucial to the overall well-being and security to the Taiwanese society, because these Indonesian caregivers are taking care of so many families, and the stability in a family will affect the stability in a society. And of course, with the presence of such huge number of Indonesian workers in Taiwan, the chance of seeing Muslims on the streets is also higher. Even though there are some language barriers, because when all of these Indonesian workers, they come to Taiwan, they would have to learn how to speak Chinese. Despite the language barrier, many of the Taiwanese people that I've met who have reverted to Islam, the majority of them somehow at some level were affected and inspired by Indonesian Muslims. Could be for different reasons. For example, many of them have reverted because they are marrying to a Muslim partner. Of course, there are also a lot of people who were influenced by their Indonesian colleagues or classmates or friends. So we can truly see the hospitality of our Indonesian brothers and sisters directly affecting the public opinion about Islam and shaping the image of Islam in Taiwan. Apart from Indonesians, of course, we do have many brothers and sisters coming from all around the world. For example, Egypt, from Nigeria, from Jordan, from Pakistan, from India. The Indonesians, of course, they are the majority among the Muslim foreigners, and the Muslim foreigners are the majority among the Muslims in Taiwan. So this means that the local Muslims are in fact the minority. Now I would like to go back in time a little bit, because when I used to be a child here in the capital city of Taipei, the Chinese Muslims were the majority. However, as we can see today, the situation has completely changed. If you come to the masjid on the day of Friday, you wouldn't be able to find people with a Chinese face like mine very easily. If you deliver a khutbah in Chinese, then probably only a few people would be able to understand the speech. This brings us the question of, where did these Chinese Muslims come from? Because as you may know, there is an ethnic group in China called the Hui Muslim ethnic group. If you're in China today, and if you're a Muslim, then people might easily misunderstand that you are related or associated to this Hui ethnic group, because Islam is almost directly associated with this ethnic group. The Hui Muslims, they have a long history in China, and I'm not going to go through in this video. But long story short, the majority of the Chinese Muslims in Taiwan, they were originally from the province of Yunnan, which still today, it is a province that is densely populated with Chinese Muslims. Many of these Muslims from Yunnan, they escaped from China back then during the Civil War in the 1950s. Some of them, they have escaped directly to Taiwan, and some of them, they have escaped first to Thailand or Myanmar, and then eventually they came to Taiwan. Of course, it's not only limited to the Muslims from Yunnan, because after the Civil War, there was a huge wave of people migrating from China to Taiwan, including my own grandparents, even though they are not part of any Muslim ethnic groups. So of course, there are lots of Muslims in Taiwan that were originally coming from different areas of China. However, unfortunately, many of those who have migrated to Taiwan back then, they were at a relatively young age. So therefore, they did not really have a solid foundation of Islamic knowledge. And after integrating into the Taiwanese society, they were not able to pass it down to the later generations. One of the phenomena we can see at the masjid today is that sometimes we have Muslims who have passed away, and then they are being taken to the masjid so that we can pray the Salatul Janazah over them. However, while we are praying, we can see a lot of people standing outside of the masjid who are watching the funeral prayer. Many of these people are not even the colleagues or friends of the person who has passed away, but rather they are the relatives or the children or the grandchildren of this person. And this is really a sad truth that is clearly showing us that the generations are gradually fading away. Nonetheless, this also made the situation in Taiwan quite interesting. Alhamdulillah, we're constantly having new reverts, and at the same time, we're having a new Muslim generation with a mixture of different ethnicities between Taiwan and other countries. And this is probably a phenomenon that is quite common in non-Muslim countries that have lots of Muslim immigrants. You can see that many of these children, they look totally like a foreigner, but culturally speaking, they are totally Taiwanese. Even when you're hearing them speaking, you wouldn't notice that this child is actually mixed. So this stage that we are in right now is extremely crucial. A Muslim who can communicate in our language and spread the message of Islam in our language is something extremely needed and demanding. And we also have to do something for the next generation of young Muslims. This is one of the reasons why I have started this channel, which is to raise awareness about the situation of Islam in Taiwan, and at the same time deliver Islamic contents by speaking in a language that people can understand. So how is the da'wah work going in Taiwan? How fast is Islam spreading in this land? Before we get into that, I need to first explain what is the public opinion regarding Islam. This may come as a surprise, but the Taiwanese government is actually quite supportive to the Muslim communities. Even though one of the bigger issues we have currently in Taiwan right now is that we don't have many masjid. In total, we only have like a dozen of them. However, we do have more than hundreds of prayer rooms around the entire island of Taiwan. And most of these prayer rooms are not even established by the Muslims, but rather by the local governments and organizations. This is partially due to, of course, the high population and growing population of Muslims in Taiwan from Indonesia. But of course, at the same time, Taiwan is a popular destination for tourists from all around the world. So establishing prayer rooms are actually quite needed. This also gets interesting because Taiwanese people are aware that there are many Indonesian Muslims, but many of them misunderstand that Islam is something that only belongs to them or to the foreigners. For example, once I went traveling with my wife to another city in Taiwan, and we happened to find a prayer room at some place. And as soon as I finished praying, I saw a survey on a table, so I went to fill the survey. And one of the questions was, "Where are you from?" And there are many options available. There is Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Cambodia, India, etc. MashaAllah, many options. But guess which country is missing? Taiwan. So generally speaking, Taiwanese people are quite friendly with Muslims. Islamophobes are everywhere around the world, so of course there are definitely some of them here too, but definitely they are not the majority. People are generally respectful and careful about religions. So living in Taiwan is quite easy in the sense that people are not oppressive to this ideology. But one of the reasons they are respectful is because they don't know much about Islam in the first place. So it is still common to see stereotypes and misconceptions. And even though some Muslims living in Taiwan, they might not feel comfortable to this, but it's not due to any ill intention most of the time, but rather a lack of understanding. So it's our job as Muslims to clarify these misconceptions and teach people the real message of Islam rather than complaining how ignorant people are. Regarding how comfortable is it to spread da'wah here in Taiwan, I would say doing public activities such as doing street da'wah is completely fine. I personally cannot give you too much details on how the situation is in mainland China, but what I can say is that the situation in China is completely separated from the situation in Taiwan. Even though we have the freedom, but we do have a lack of effort and resources in terms of da'wah work. Inshallah, I will be sharing some of the da'wah work that we have been doing so far later on in other videos. So stay tuned for more contents by subscribing to this channel. And this is the end of the video for today. Please take care and inshallah, I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha